Here's the head gardener getting ready for this year's bedding. Right, are we all ready to roll? Bright-eyed, bushy-tailed and raring to go? Not me. Right, we'll do our usual. We'll get into the comments in just a sec. I have to inform those of you that want to just watch the film, then go forward about 20 minutes or whatever it says. Up here, is it up here or is it up there? There's one of them, up there I think. Right, so if you go there, jump for about 20 minutes, it's there waiting for you. Meanwhile, we'll get on with the sparkling wit and wisdom of this this week's... no. Misfiring straight away. This week's comments. This week's... this is going from bad to worse, folks. Right, let's get underway then with Dave from Cornwall. Our first film we're looking at was the Dursley branch. And David said, being a vintage machinery enthusiast, as soon as you said Dursley, I think of Lister stationary engines. Yeah. They started by making cream separators and even bicycles. Oh no. That's not Trev, is it up there? No, Trev will claim that's a helicopter. Right, they started by making cream separators and even bicycles in 1867. 1867. It's 100 years this year since they started making their well-known Lister D stationary engine. You go to any steam show anywhere around about and you'll find Lister stationary engines going there. And it says they actually made 250,000 of them. Blimey. So, hardly rare then, I suppose, or are they? I thought most of them just got dumped as scrap. Well done for tracing the old line, he says. The footpath seemed to resemble a maze. Yes, it was a bit like that, I'm afraid. We were going from a walkbook which, well, the author does his best. Andrew Merriman coming back on. Thank you very much, Andrew. Good to hear from you. Although a sad tale here, crikey. Sorry for going AWOL last Friday, says Andrew. On Thursday night I tripped on the stairs and fell, using my head to demolish part of the staircase. Oh, crikey. I ended up in A&E for 10 hours. Not good, is it? With blood pouring from my head in 2 places. So that'll teach me to watch what I was doing rather than looking at the view. Well done, Andrew. Well done. Here's our Trev. The old bridge to nowhere is a lovely old relic. It's similar to the listed bridge at St Mary's, Lydney, which the Forest Railway managed to demolish last year by not taking note of the height of the crane they were moving. Oh dear. Yes, I remember that. Yes, the crane which moving up the rail collided with the bridge, and now the bridge resembles a little bit of a DIY job. Yeah, never mind. So says Trev, if the one you filmed disappears in the night, we can have a good guess as to where it's gone. Yes, you could do that. It would be a good idea, to be honest, rather than have it just rotting away in the undergrowth there. Yeah, I'm looking forward, he says, to my walking trip in Cornwall this coming week. Well done, Trev. Yeah, we'll have a wander around Cornwall. Beautiful. Marilyn, our elder sister, talking to us from Cheshire. Good afternoon, she says. Another sunny day. Oh, not here, Marilyn. Can't make his mind up here. We do get some sunshine, but we've got a rather fierce wind around about. There you go. Mercifully not so hot, she says, which is good. I haven't done much apart from skulk in front of the fan. You have a lovely turn of phrase, Marilyn. Skulking in front of the fan. I managed to put it together easily once I got it out of the box. Oh, cry. Talk about well wrapped, she says. I had to get rid of the packaging and I think it's going to fill one entire bin. And she says it did. Oh, cry. Yes, they do like their packaging, but they've probably come a long way. How nice to see the railway pub still there in Dursley, and only a stalwart explorer would find the remains of the line. Yeah, it did take a bit of digging out. I love the footbridge to nowhere, she says, and the monumental carvings, alleyways and hidden bridges. Yeah, good. Glad you enjoyed that then, Marilyn. Next Saturday, she says, next Saturday, I'm venturing south to see the younger sister. 3 hours journey each way. Oh, you would like that, could have been on a train. I hope the trains work, she says. Stay safe and enjoy the flowers. Thank you very much, Marilyn. Thanks, Marilyn. Brilliant. Jem, hope you've been coping in the heat wave. Yeah, we had a few weeks ago, we had a bit of a heat wave come through here. It did get a little bit sticky, I would say. Much better temperature now if the wind would drop down just a touch. Engage on a shell. Simon. We followed the saga of Simon and his retirement for about 2 years, I think. And finally he's retired, so I answered his comment and asked him how he was getting on with his retirement. And he said, I haven't been there yet, Ron. I'm still a very long way from completing my list of jobs. You'll never finish it, Simon, trust me. Retirement, my backside hasn't hit the chair yet. Go, Suzanne, get your money's worth out of him, I would. Oh dear, dearie me. Alright, Pete Payne. Oh, Pete. Another grand walk, he said. To elaborate on Dave's comment, Dave from Cornwall on the Lister bike, the bicycle he mentions was the design of a Danish engineer, Mikael Pedersen. All right. The first cycles carried his name and are very rare. I sold one to a Dutch museum for a friend. Well, I'm blessed. Pete's in amongst all these bikes and things, and wheeling, dealing, restoring. He's always got something on the go. West Country Wanderings. Paul. It seemed to have gone quiet on reopening the Cirencester branch. Yeah, this was a little 1 or 2 films back, where we walked what we could of the Cirencester to Kemble line, and of course a big fanfare about the reopening of that line at some stage. But as we said at the time, that comes up every 5 or 10 years, big hoo-ha about reopening it, then it goes quiet and you hear nothing about it for the next 5 or 10 years. But there you go. Paul said it definitely needs a railway, and I think it would be well used. With the growth of the town, I went through Kemble last night, coming back from Cookern in the southern part of Somerset. Yeah, you're right, I am missing a bit. I'm trying to catch up. And literally hundreds of passengers got off there at Kemble from the Paddington to Worcester train. There was hundreds of passengers going into Kemble who would, hopefully a large proportion of, would jump on the train and motor off to Cirencester or Tetby if they were to open that, but don't let it get too ambitious. Right. Ah, yes. David, all the way from sunny Spain. You think some of my walks are tough? You look at some of David's, they're more mountaineering than walking, I reckon. But there's some very rugged scenery around by David. He said, morning, yes, you're part of my Friday morning ritual with my breakfast. Ah, yeah. From what I gather from various comments here and there, quite a few of you get up in the morning, get the coffee pot on, get your cereals in the bowl, switch on Parkinson's walks, and it's part of Friday morning. So yeah, certainly is in David. He said, you're part of my Friday morning ritual with my breakfast. I always find Charles and Jim have commented first, despite them being almost antipodes of each other. That's interesting, isn't it? Charles and Jim both up there first, and yet if you look at the globe, one's here and one's here. Don't know how that works. I'll have to sit down and work it out one day. Another enjoyable matters arising. I reckon this week you'd left the handbrake on and the brakes were binding at the end. I think the brakes were binding all the way through, but then that's not unusual, is it? So don't worry about it. Yeah. Strangely enough, David says, that bridge looks very modern in appearance, as did the accommodation bridges. Yeah, that big bridge with the columns underneath, that must have been replaced shortly before it closed, surely, because it looked very modern. Yeah, so they spent an absolute fortune on it and then closed the line. Sounds about right. As always, he says, there were little clues along the way, and even if you couldn't follow the track bed, it made for a very enjoyable walk. Did indeed, David. Yes, enjoyed it. Kind of. Malcolm says, thank you for an enjoyable trek. The line and the industries, the line and the industries it served have gone, but what remains is beautiful countryside in Cotswolds Hills. Yeah, I remember, says Malcolm, descending into Dursley when I last visited in the 1980s at the end of a very long walk from Stroud. Oh, that was a long walk. The Cam Dursley station opened in 1994, sometime after my walk, and I remember taking the bus back to Gloucester. Were I to visit the interesting town of Dursley today, I think I would take the train and do a somewhat shorter walk. Yeah, still a fair walk, man. No, not like coming from Stroud. Right, Jim Nicholas from New Zealand. Good old Jim. A longer walk than you'd expected, he says, and a bit of confusion over the route, but quite pleasant anyway. It seems that you survived the heat wave earlier in the week. This is what Malvern was talking about. Yeah, it did get a bit warm. But maybe it was not so bad around your way. My son in Sussex was complaining about it. Oh, that's typical of us, isn't it, really? I mean, it gets cold and we complain about the cold, it gets hot, we complain about the hot. Come in between and we probably moan about that somewhere or other. Yeah, oh. Michael from Poland. That was a bit of a trek for you, he says. What a shame the author of the book couldn't tell his right from his left. Bit of an essential, that, isn't it, really, if you're doing a guidebook. Oh dear. Where was I? The infrastructure, he says, that remained was lovely to see, as were the old photographs you included in the video. Somebody claimed one of those photographs isn't original. I'm not quite sure which one. So I think you got the general idea. Abandoned railways are wrong up there in the Cotswolds. Once again, some excellent comments from the Parkinsons Walk family. I always look forward to their wit and wisdom. Yeah, well done. Dursley branch, you worked really hard on this one, Rob, and you managed to find some long lost infrastructure. Well done on a very difficult explore. It's raining here, he says, and a lot cooler up in the Cotswolds. And that's the place to be, it sounds like. Yeah, it's good. Charles, New Jersey, US of A. I usually catch your videos around 8 PM Eastern Coast Time, which is 5 hours behind Greenwich Mean Time. Just a fancy way to say I like to watch your videos Thursday evening after dinner, which is usually about an hour after YouTube posts it. Yeah, well, I put it up at midnight, our time, or rather YouTube does. And so, depending on time zones, depends on when you get to see it, doesn't it? Very interesting. Somerset man walking. Yeah, Darren. He's been up doing his usual early morning walks again. Brilliant, some of them. Good morning, Ron. Lovely walk and really nice to see the remains of some of the infrastructure. I really did like the old photos of the station. Quite amazing, Darren. Yeah. Well, it was the period photograph, so yeah. Engine there with his heart, no cover for the driver, just a sheet in front of him with a goggle eyes in it, and that's your lot, mate. Raining or snowy or sleeting, well, just put another novel of coal on the fire. Yeah, yes. Rodney says, thanks for that. It revived many memories for me, having served my apprenticeship in Dursley from 1968, 2 years after the closure. The town was a thriving hub of industry at the time. Accordingly, it was a good place to learn a trade. Well then, Rodney, a resident of the area. Right. Okay, so now we're changing venues and we're going to Langford in the Cotswolds. Look at an old disused branch line that used to run between Whitney and Fairford once upon a time, and the plan was to get it as far as Cheltenham to make it into some sort of main line, but it never got there, unfortunately. Never mind, good walk. Malcolm says, thank you for a nice walk along a once busy branch line. Those iron latches and gate hooks seem to have weathered better than some of the brickwork over those bridges. Those latches amaze me. You find quite a few of them round about at accommodation crossings. What amazes me is that they were there for 200 years and yet they still work. Not amazing? Absolutely amazing. They must have got the tolerances just right. Yeah. Pete Payne, I enjoyed that one, he says. Exploring around places like that is the place to be. If I never saw another town or city ever again, that would suit me fine. Not much chance, I'm afraid, Pete. Barry says, there's always been something I like about the countryside, and your podcast captures it. Good. Abandoned railways are wrong. An interesting walk, he says. It does seem strange walking a railway with no major earthworks. It's true, isn't it? Nice to see a few remaining bits of infrastructure though. Apparently those dips under the bridges were quite often flooded. If you remember, rather than build the bridges up, which obviously is costing them a little bit in labour and materials, they scooped out underneath the bridges to get their trains underneath. It seemed a cheaper method, I guess. But, as Ron said, they flooded quite frequently in there, which you would expect. But, he also makes the point about the infrastructure, no cuttings or embankments, and you must have made that a very cheap line to build, surely. You didn't do any major work, you just pulled it up a little bit, shoved some ballast on it, and away you go. I'm sure it wasn't that easy. But you know what I mean. You know where I'm coming from. Marilyn. Ooh. Hope you and the worldwide family are all doing well. Thank you, Marilyn. Not a bad day here today. Good. Daughters have just landed in Brazil, so I have to stay out of trouble for the next 2 weeks. Marilyn. Stay out of trouble for 2 weeks? Never. It won't happen. Oh dear. She says you have to wonder about Kelmscott and Langford station and how many passengers used it. But it did have a siding. Yeah, I think that it was mainly for freight, that line, so you'd have a siding, and there was a castle pen, wasn't there, at one of them? Yeah, so mainly for freight. I don't think it was dependent on passenger numbers, so it wouldn't last as long as it did, I suppose. I love those two little bridges, she says, reminiscent of the ones on the Linton and Barnstable. Only the bare necessity. Yeah, that's true, isn't it? They stuck the passing of time. They're still there, you have to say. All right, here we go. The highlight of my week has to win this week's Green Signals YouTube quiz. Wow! How about that? That girl knows her trains. Oh, blood. They was answering a question on the railway interloper, which was described as being a piece of railway that looked as if it had always been there, but in fact it hasn't. I suggested Winchcombe Station, which was transplanted from Monmouth Troy and won a Green Signals mug. Hooray! Green Signals mug, well done. Yeah, the older sister, that's Marilyn, is off down south tomorrow for the day to meet up with the younger sister. Should be nice. The real one, she says. Early bed tonight. Stay safe and don't forget the cheese sandwich. Do my best. It's not under my control mainly. David, down there in Spain. The gatekeeper's cottage looked more like a mansion, although now it's blah 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 blah. Yeah, so I got derailed there because it didn't go into sync. So we came off the rail. Let's give it another shot, see how we get on. The gatekeeper's cottage looked more like a mansion, although now it's extended. It must have been a nice place to live. How many times a day would he have to open and close the gates? How many times a day would he have to open and close the gates? Half a dozen? 2? Yeah, it depends, I suppose. Yeah, well, always good to see the remains, and you were rewarded with that sleeper complete with a rail chair. You don't often see that combination. I could hear an audible gasp as you described your sandwiches being limp lettuce. What have you been up to get rewarded with sandwiches like that? I'm not saying. I did some reading last night, says David. Not sure if that will qualify me for cheese in my sandwiches. I'll keep you informed. You're really trying to make me feel jealous. Charles, New Jersey, USA. I was impressed with your fortitude to tackle that undergrowth with a gammy leg. Good on you, Ron. Yeah. Yes, if Pauline had found out that I was doing extensions, she wouldn't have been best pleased, since she's the nurse. And I was given lots of instructions before I set out, but we made it. Michael, all the way from sunny Poland, or your winter lags behind ours, doesn't it, Michael? Yeah, you should be into the joys of spring by now. A lovely video, he says. Superb walk is somewhat difficult to follow the writer's walk instructions. Yeah, there we go again. The bridges you found were superb. In my mind, the find of the walk was a railway sleeper together with its chair. Yeah, and we had a few comments giving us the lowdown on the markings on that chair. So yeah, you must really read the comments in full, because they're really worth a look, full of interesting information from the well-known people that we have on our channel. That didn't work either, did it? No, that's because I'm thinking ahead, you see, and with the old Parkinsons, my brain can't cope with too many forward leaps. Anyway, let's get on with this. Stop muttering, for goodness sake. Somerset man walking, Darren. A wonderful wonder here, he said. Love seeing the bits of infrastructure, bridges, etc., and that rail chair. The restaurant could do with a lick of paint. Restaurants are where you find them in the country. Oh, lovely. Jim, all the way from New Zealand. I wonder how much more has disappeared in the decades since you did that one. Yeah, quite a lot of it, I should think, Ron. Jim, sorry, Jim. I'm rattling along here. I'm getting near the end. Don't worry. He said, I was shocked to hear you say we haven't any cheese. How can such a state exist? Surely you remember what happened when Wallace said that to Gromit. They had to make a trip to the moon to stock up. Hope you found some supplies closer to home. Yes, I did. Yeah. Thank you, Jim. Have a good week, mate. David, Spain. No, it's not. David, Cornwall. Good day down there. Good day, he says. I'm wondering if that dairy herd still exists. So many have gone now. Yeah, true. Well, they're getting less for their milk than it costs them to produce it, don't they? Those fields have probably been ploughed for reseeding when Google Earth recorded them, and now the other fields are growing the corn. Yeah, when I looked on Google Earth, it all seemed like pasture land. When I got out there, it was all ploughed. So, there you go. Ah, this is interesting. Round bales can weather a fair bit of rain out in the fields. Ah, same principle as the thatched roof. Yes, because when I was growing up, the farm I worked on, once you started baling, that's it. You got it indoors. You didn't leave it outside anymore. Even if it meant working into the wee small hours, you kept going, getting the bales in to dry. So when you see round bales out in a field in the weather, it makes you wonder what's going on. And David says that wrapping on there, which doesn't look very substantial, it's just a couple of wraps of nylon mesh that actually keeps quite a lot of rain out. Yeah. Thanks for that, David. Very good of you. And to finish us off this week, Andrew Merriman. Andrew with a sore head. No wonder the line closed, he said. Lettuce sandwiches and no cheese and pickle, the line would be doomed. True. Rules and regulations for the use of occupation crossings were very strict, especially when large loads or animals were involved. Yeah, brilliant piece there. Andrew has included the regulations, if you like, for accommodation crossings. Fascinating insight. It answers quite a few questions that I have had over the years. I was very thankful for that, Andrew. Thank you. And if you guys want to know the regulations, and I suggest you'd be interested, go and take a peek. And, one of the things that always made me wonder, the trains would come on a certain time, so the labourers or the farmers, farmhands would know when it was due, except that, of course, they didn't have watches. They couldn't afford watches in those days. So how did they know when the train was due? And of course the answer is the church clock. Kept them up to speed all day, and they knew when to make the crossing. Oh yeah, interesting. Thank you, Andrew. Very good of you. Right, now then. Next, in about 5 minutes, 5 seconds. No, I thought I lasted out quite well this week. Really, we started a little bit better though. Right, now let's get this finished up. Right, the archive film in just a few seconds. The South Cerney branch line. We had a wander down there, some magnificent bridges and things down there to look at. So yeah, we're going to have a wander down there in a minute or two. Should be okay. And then next week we'll have a trial. I'm going to put up my Thames and Severn Canal Walk, which was one of the first films I made, actually. Bumbled around for a bit and I finally put it up on YouTube some while ago. I think it's worth another look, so we'll have a go down there next Friday. So I hope to meet you down there. Don't fall in, and I'll see you there. Don't be late. Another Midlands and South Western Junction abandoned railway walk. Just outside South Cerney, and we're climbing up the rampart to a very large bridge. Midland Railway Standard, large coping stone, blue engineering brick over the span. If you looked over these ramparts 60 years ago, this is what you might have seen. Or this, which is South Cerney Station. And nowadays the footpath actually marks the platform edge. Right, let's get on with this walk then. Through there. From here on the path you can see the bridge, 10 spans. Always cut in the supports to lessen weight. Beautiful structure. Not good. And the drain from the roadbed keeps the moisture out of the structure. This, complete with party balloon, is the rail bed, which is why this arch is so tall. this is the second one. Double track. Beautiful alignment of all the arches here. Stepping down and down and down as the bridge goes down. Gentle walk along the platform. And the slope here, believe it or not, is the actual platform edge. A once thriving platform station, which would put the signal box over there. I will follow the railway on along here. Rather pretty in the sunlight. To here, which is a magnificent brick-built culvert over the River Churn, showing the lovely railway plinths. Local residents making the most of a waterside frontage. Here's a lovely contrast look. Brick-built bridge down there, original, and the modern equivalent. Takes half the time to build, well, a fraction of the time to build. It doesn't have the same aesthetic appeal. Still double track here by the look of it. Goods yard, now a playing field. And so out into the country. Looking like it went single line here. The owners off to the side here, look, are making the most of their stream. Putting a bridge across, well, that must mean there's another culvert here then. Not quite as magnificent a structure as the last one. We should shut up, bird. But effective just the same. Mind you, looking on the other side, bit of maintenance wouldn't go amiss. A little ways farther on, yet another somewhat muddy culvert, I would have to say, which is overshadowed in the background by that magnificent structure there. Look at that. That's looking towards South Cerney. And that's looking away. This is what's called the Bow Bridge for some reason. Nobody seems to know why they invested so much time and money on their bridges. It's been suggested that the idea was to spread the weight on poor ground, but I don't think that theory works because it adds weight. Well, we're glad they did it. Like the other bridge, it's got arches all the way through it to save a bit on bricks, reduce the weight. Same on the other side. Looking on the top, that's looking away from South Cerney, and there in all its glory, Bow Bridge. From the top of the main span, looking over these wonderful blue brick coping stones, you can actually get an impression of a railway. You can imagine the express hurtling down there. We're headed that way. The railway now has become an embankment. Yet another culvert down there. They really had to deal with some marshy land. Why we're on an embankment, I guess. Just see the water. And at risk to life and limb, that's a culvert itself. And a special treat, they've left us some ballast. Talking of special treats, we leave the railway at this point, which is now on the embankment to our right. From here, with the view of the ballast, you'd think there's a railway still up there. And then, tra under this thing, an accommodation bridge or tunnel. Across here to here, new, original, you choose. Which brings us out to here, which is no less than the towpath for the Thames and Severn Canal. 2 for the price of 1. I'll show you on here what the plan is. We started here in South Cerney, going a little way north on the railway, looking at the magnificent bridges and culverts. Then we'll skip across to the Thames and Severn. We'll follow that then all the way down to the southeast, and then we'll leave the Thames and Severn, pop across, start filming the railway on the way back. Now, it's not really a canal film, but I'm sure there's things of interest along here we'll have a look at as we pass them by. Just there across the field, you can make out the embankment we've just come off for the railway. Just up there. Some miles from here, in Siddington, the Midland and South Western Junction Railway actually crossed the old canal. Not much water in it here. 1896. Sweep of the canal, turning left. Section here, as you can see, still got water in it, which is good for the old canal. Built in the late 1700s. Railway built mid 1800s. And surprisingly, the railway didn't buy out the canal, which is a normal trick. They left that for the Great Western to do. Feature of the Thames and Severn Canal, Cotswolds stone wall on the side of the towpath. Built to stop your horse deciding to zoom off into the field to get some grass. A somewhat battered old sign, but standing by the side of the first of the locks that we're coming across. Well, that's a slightly better soundtrack than I've been getting so far on this walk. Well, rather like the railway, isn't it, really? A beautiful walk. A nice green tunnel. Early spring. Well, it's not actually, it's late spring now, isn't it? We're into May, folks. We're into May. All the while with our old friend, the Canal for Company. And they've had to resort to an embankment along here as well.
I often have wandered in deep contemplation. It seems that the mind
number 2.
runs wild when you're all alone. The way that it could be, the ways that it should be, things I'd do differently if I could do them again. I've always loved springtime, the passing of winter, the green of the new leaves in life going on, the promise of morning, long days of summer.
And that's the approach to what once was a bridge. All that's left now is that rather sorry pile of bricks.
I'm just an old cowboy from high Colorado, too old to ride anymore, too blind to see. I sleep in the city now, away from my mountains, away from the cabin we always called home. I dreamed I left there on an old Palomino, whispering Jessie rode right by my side. I long to hold her, to hear her soft breathing, the touch of her cool hands on my fevered brow. Whispering Jessie still rides in the mountains, still sings in the canyon, still lives in my heart.
This was seen here in the early 1900s. Different house, of course, same location. Brick strips here under the bridge give your horse some traction, but I'm not entirely sure how you got him up there. Right, under Spine Road in this direction. This is the main road down through the gravel pits. Halfway house. First time this year. Coat off. Beautiful day. Ideal for looking at railways, canals and the like. There's a culvert, Thames and Severn style. Compare that to the railway. Each their own. And here's another speciality of the Thames and Severn, around Lockkeeper's house. Either lock paddle machinery. That's a big lock. That'll be us. I don't think the railway was here then. And now we start to climb, which is a good sign. And there's a familiar parapet up ahead. It does actually look like we're on track. Doubtful there for a while. Because of this, which is a new construction and looked for all the world as if they'd taken down the old bridge and put that up in its place. Because looking down there, looks like railway. Even that does slightly. Good, right, onward. That's more like it. Have to go look over the other side, of course. Perfect. Now that's what you call a coping stone. Wow. The bridge is actually closed to traffic for reasons that we may find in a moment. But before then, this is where it gets tricky. At the end of the bridge, turn left down the stone track. Looks good so far. Not so good since I forgot my walking boots. Left again through the hole in the hedge. Right. So far so good. And then left again on what should be the railway. Oh, looks good to me. Which will eventually bring us back to here, which is the bridge we just crossed. I have to say it does look as if the footpath is on a different alignment to the railway. Looking through the arch. And the reason for closing the bridge to traffic becomes evident. That is probably more the result of poor or no maintenance than it is a building in the first place. Although the problem's pretty universal on this bridge. Could be a bad batch of bricks, I guess. I'm going for bad maintenance. There's no problems with any of the other ones. A measly 9 archer, this one. All the others are 10. Our path takes us up there now, past all the May blossom. Dodging puddles as we go. Well, a cutting of sorts. Bit of a poor excuse for one, really. A couple of feet. I'd be very surprised if this was here in the days of the railway. A steep humpbacked bridge. And the reason for the false bridge back there becomes plain now. And this bridge is here as a tunnel for the conveyor over to here. Gravel extraction. That's noisier than the train. Where's that one? 1 more mile. We could do it. I'm not sure if this will come out or not. There's a field gate there, and then cross the railway, and there's a field gate there. And this would have been a four-way system. There would have been gates which closed across the railway that way, and of course the other way. They would have prevented cattle from roaming up and down the railway. Always a good idea. Still a beautiful day. Have a job to beat this, wouldn't you? As a pursuit on a sunny day. Nice level walking, beautiful countryside. Pity about the noise. This noisy lot. Actually, you might not hear anything on the edit. Another one of these. And so-called civilization. Some more belated maintenance. Now this one, despite the traffic, we can actually do a full pan. We get to see all 10 spans. Look at that. And the brackets there still in place. One with half an insulator on. It took the signal wires. You have to think that short term a level crossing would have been cheaper. But long term, with staff costs, who knows. That's where we've come from. That's where we're heading to. Bit more gloop. Private. Exclusive canal side residence. Not bad. In case you're interested. The railway continues across there, and we now turn left back to the car. They have provided a path. Which is very useful because it brings us back here to the trailhead.
But when I think of you and others